So for my second tetrad, I wanted to look at the idea of all-day kindergarten, which is the norm in on all across Ontario. We're about 9 or 10 years into full-day kindergarten, um, but it is potentially on the chopping block with the new Doug Ford government. And because I taught in kindergarten for 5 years previous to teaching grade 7, I thought this would be something that I could speak a little bit about and explore with you. So all of the good research that's coming out of Ontario is pointing in the direction that full day early learning programs are incredibly effective for a multitude of different reasons, and is definitely something that we should be saving. It's one of the highlights and one of the success stories of Ontario's education system. So what does it enhance? So some of the things that we see here are that, first of all, that it provides full day care and learning environments for 3 to 6 year olds in Ontario. So it moves 3 to 6 year olds out of daycares, whether they're subsidized or private, and into the public education system. It eliminates inconsistent kindergarten programming between boards across Ontario, and it for sure adds that level of there's an Ontario College of Teachers certified teacher directing the program. We have a program that provides working parents with taxpayer-based, socialized childcare for kids that are school age, which is amazing. The program itself is play-based. It's incredibly well researched and employs thousands of ECEs, early childhood educators, or registered early childhood educators across Ontario. Um, we have some amazing things. You can see actually the top left is actually my classroom, my kindergarten classroom. So nature and sustainability are a huge focus of the full day kindergarten program. Outdoor play is expected to be done on a daily basis. We have teachers who have done a lot of work in things like forest schools, and especially in Reggio Emilia inspired practice, which is again an incredibly powerful model of early childhood learning. We see some of the other benefits include ability to get early intervention for students that have learning difficulties, speech difficulties, autism. It's very family centered. We get more time. These little people get more time with teachers who love and care for them. The self-regulation skills they develop is incredibly has been shown, the research is showing that self-regulation improves a lot. And I included the 4 frame up there because I felt like that sort of spoke to the balance in our full day kindergarten program in Ontario. So the idea of belonging, engagement, expression, and well-being, especially that well-being corner, being very important to the full day kindergarten program. So what does it reverse? It takes away the idea of highly structured, achievement-based kindergartens. There are not very many must-learns in kindergarten. We have developmental progressions, we have topics that we can cover with kids, but it is all based on their individual development, their interests. So that idea of that highly structured kindergarten, that where the idea of reading, they must be able to read this many number of words, is not really part of our program in kindergarten. Some of the other things it reverses are funding, because funding for kindergarten does push the limits. Taxpayers right now are not very happy with the cost of education. They feel like it's costly in Ontario. It's $1.5 billion for the kindergarten program, and the Conservatives feel like that's a place where we need to make that sacrifice. Higher class sizes can be really hard on some of the little people in our full day kindergarten classes, especially kids with ASD. They are not small. The rooms often are not designed for the size of class that they are accommodating, which can be a problem. The idea of indoor learning is not necessarily at the focus of the full day kindergarten program. So that for some people can be a challenge. And one of the sort of problems that might come along with early intervention is the idea of misdiagnosis, because if we're diagnosing kids too early with things, it may be wasting our resources for no benefit to the children. What does it retrieve? So if we go back in time, what did kindergarten look like, or learning for that age group look like? Definitely mom at home was a huge part of kindergarten age learning. Prior to kindergartens coming across Ontario, that age group was definitely still educated at home. Mom stayed at home. If we go even further back, there was no public education. And if you learn to read or write, and that's a big if, it was definitely with your parents if they were educated themselves. Kids worked. Kids have this particular slide speaks to the idea that grandparents have had a huge role in educating little people, especially in the culture that I currently teach in. Most of my students are either Caribbean or South Asian, and South Asian grandparents are incredibly important educators and caregivers for little people and their family. The other idea is that outdoor learning is being replaced. So, if we look at models like what is happening in Finland, kids stay outside. They're playing outside every day. They're not in formal school systems, and they're building their connection with nature, which is definitely something that kindergarten programs are challenged to continue to try and do in Ontario. There's that the illiterate kindergartners of Finland. Lots of great articles about that out there. Okay, so what's made obsolete by full day kindergarten programs? Definitely daycares. We're not happy in Ontario to lose out on the 3 to 6-year-old market. Some private daycares are still operating, but definitely not to the same extent that they were prior to full day kindergarten coming in. Parents are now going back to work a little earlier, maybe because some of them may have chosen to stay at home with their children. And that's definitely not a reality now, that there's such a cost-effective alternative. It's hard to justify it unless your child really needs you to be there. Down at the bottom there, we see that, back to, busing and transport. Is definitely another area of cost savings, because we're not busing them in the middle of the day anymore. So bus companies lost it on that market. Another thing is the idea of naps. Little people don't have naps in full day kindergarten. And so for some, that's really a challenge. So just a few quick insights before I wrap this up. I think some of the key ideas here, full day kindergarten, it should be an outdoor oriented, unstructured, playful, joyful experience for kids. That's the idea in Reggio Emilia, that kids are not, there's no must-dos. Kids can engage with activities and learning and activities that seem interesting to them and that are meeting them at their developmentally appropriate level. I think that the idea of all hands being on deck for kindergarten, so we could see even in older models, the family has been incredibly important throughout time in educating little people from the ages of 3 to 6. So we definitely need to make sure that our full day kindergarten programs continue to bring all hands on deck, teachers, parents, extended family members, community partners, researchers, and government partners.